Hello everyone. There comes a moment in every life where the choice is simple but not easy. Either rise or retreat, either act or explain, either grow or justify why you didn't. And it's in that exact moment where you see the separation, not between rich and poor, not between lucky and unlucky, but between winners and excuse makers. Winners don't make excuses because they know every excuse is a wall between them and the life they want. They understand that the moment they start explaining why not, they're already drifting away from a how yes. See, excuses are seductive. They feel like relief. They sound reasonable. But behind every excuse is a dream buried, a goal postponed, a victory missed. Excuses are comfort zones wrapped in logic. And comfort zones, that's where passion goes to die. A winner doesn't pretend circumstances don't exist, but they don't hide behind them either. Bad childhood still showed up. No money, found a way. No support, created their own fire. Because they know the world doesn't hand trophies to those who almost tried. There's a silent power in owning your life. Saying, it's on me. If I fail, I'll grow. If I fall, I'll get back up. But I won't point fingers. But I won't blame the weather, the system, or the timing. That's not just strength. That's leadership. Yes, winners fail. They get tired. They stumble. But they don't justify staying down. Because to a winner, failure is feedback, not a finish line. They'd rather be bruised from effort than polished from excuses. So ask yourself, what are you delaying with a reason? What could you build if you stopped explaining and started doing? Because you either have results or excuses, not both. Winners choose results. They silence every excuse before it speaks. And in that silence, they build legacies. We often think of excuses as harmless explanations, justifications we give ourselves and others to feel better about not taking action. But the truth is, excuses are far more dangerous than they appear. They are comfort zones in disguise. Cloaked in logic, wrapped in emotion, and served as soft pillows to rest on when life gets hard. When you make an excuse, what you're really doing is choosing comfort over challenge, security over growth, and stagnation over. Every time you make an excuse, whether you realize it or not, you're stacking bricks that build an invisible wall between you and the life you want. That wall might look like procrastination, fear, self-doubt, or external blame. But its foundation is always the same, the decision to explain away effort instead of apply it. Excuses are subtle. They start as harmless phrases. I'm too tired. I don't have enough time. I'm not ready yet. And then one by one, those thoughts become barriers. Soon you're boxed in, not by lack of talent or opportunity, but by your own unwillingness to stretch beyond what's easy. That's the danger. Excuses protect your pride in the short term but prevent your growth in the long term. On the other side, effort is the tool that tears those walls down and builds bridges to new realities. Effort doesn't wait for the perfect condition. It shows up when it's inconvenient. It keeps moving even when the path isn't clear. Effort is raw, uncomfortable, and sometimes thankless. But it's what moves you from who you are to who you're meant to be. Think of anyone who has done something extraordinary. They weren't given special access or a secret shortcut. They simply chose to put in effort when others settled for excuses. While some people were explaining why they couldn't, winners were quietly figuring out how they could. While some were listing what they lacked, winners were using what little they had to take one more step forward. Excuses separate. They isolate. They disconnect you from action, from discipline, from people who are climbing while you're hesitating. But effort connects. It builds bridges to knowledge, to progress, to mentors, to momentum. And once you start putting in that effort, consistently, deliberately, you begin to realize that success was never behind a wall. It was always on the other side of your willingness to work. Winners aren't born with a perfect roadmap. They don't always have access to more resources, more connections, or more luck. What sets them apart is their mindset, their refusal to accept defeat as final, and their unshakable belief that if a door doesn't open, they'll build one themselves. This is the true DNA of a winner. The relentless pursuit of a solution, even when the path forward is unclear, blocked, or non-existent. When faced with a challenge, the average person looks for excuses to retreat. It's too hard. I don't know how. No one is helping me. But a winner's instinct is different. They ask themselves, what can I do with what I have? How can I figure this out? Who can I become in this process? They don't wait for perfect conditions. They create progress in imperfect ones. They don't wait for someone to hand them a plan. They become the architect of their own breakthrough. History is filled with stories of people who had every reason to quit, but didn't. Why? Because they understood something simple yet profound. If no path exists, they can create one with grit, creativity, and perseverance. Winners operate with a mindset that says, as long as I'm breathing, there's a way. And if there isn't, I'll make one. That mindset is more powerful than talent. It's stronger than resources because it taps into something internal, an unwillingness to be stopped. This kind of drive doesn't come from outside validation. It comes from within, from a personal decision that obstacles will not be excuses and that limitations are just puzzles waiting to be solved. Winners adapt. They rework their strategy. They look at what others call dead ends and say, there's still space to carve through. They don't need permission to chase greatness. They give themselves the green light and take the first step, even if they're stepping into uncertainty. It's not about having all the answers. It's about refusing to give up until you find one or build one. Success is impartial. It doesn't listen to your reasons, sympathize with your situation, or make exceptions for your pain. It doesn't slow down for those who are trying or adjust the rules for those who almost showed up. Success is earned, not explained. It's achieved by those who take full ownership of their lives, not those who present compelling stories about why they could. You see, life will offer you two choices. You can chase success, or you can protect your excuses, but you cannot do both. Excuses may win you sympathy, but they'll never win you results. They might earn you a nod from people who understand your struggle, but they won't move you 1 inch closer to your goals. That's the brutal truth. Success doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It doesn't reward your intentions. It rewards your consistency, your sacrifice, your resilience. Winners understand this harsh reality. That's why they stop giving energy to justifications and start feeding discipline. While others are busy explaining their limitations, winners are using every ounce of strength to rise above them. While some complain about how hard it is, winners are too busy working to notice how difficult it feels. Success is blind to your excuses, but it is deeply attracted to your end. The world is full of talented people who never reached their potential. Not because they weren't good enough, but because they kept convincing themselves that circumstances were to blame. But success doesn't care about your background, your broken past, your fears, or your delays. It doesn't care how unfair it was or how tired you are. It cares about what you do despite those things. And the truth is, most excuses are built on emotion, not fact. They're rooted in fear, doubt, comparison, and fatigue. But none of those emotions change the rules. Success will always require the same thing: action, persistence, discipline, courage. You either deliver results or you deliver reasons, never both. In a world full of noise, opinions, explanations, justifications, what truly cuts through is action. You can talk about your dreams, explain your delays, and give detailed reasons for why something didn't happen. But none of that carries the weight of what you actually do. Because at the end of the day, people don't measure you by what you said you would do. They measure you by what you actually did. Your actions become your signature. They define your reputation, shape your results, and reveal your character. You can say you're committed, but if your habits don't match, the words are empty, You can say you're focused, but if your time is constantly wasted, the truth is you can talk about potential, vision, and goals, but it's your daily effort, the grind, the persistence, the showing up when it's hard, that speaks volumes beyond any excuse ever could. Excuses are verbal shields we use to defend our pride, but action is the only real proof of intent. Winners understand this deeply. That's why they don't get caught up in explaining themselves. They let their consistency do the talking. They understand that every time they take a step forward, no matter how small, it screams louder than 1,000 reasons for standing still. Think about it. The world isn't moved by why you couldn't. It's moved by what you did anyway. People remember the ones who fought through pain, uncertainty, doubt, and fear, not the ones who had a great excuse for not trying. When you choose action over explanation, you build momentum. And momentum creates results, not sympathy. In life, it's easy to rationalize our lack of progress. We're tired, we're busy, we're afraid, we're unsure. But success doesn't come to those who explain their obstacles. It comes to those who overcome them through relentless action. You don't have to have the loudest voice or the best words. You just need to move consistently, relentlessly, quietly if you must. Because in the end, your grind will always echo louder than your excuse. Growth doesn't speak the language of excuses. It doesn't respond to "I can't," "it's too late," or "I'm not ready." Growth exists in a completely different space, a space of discomfort, effort, risk, and relentless truth. And to reach that space, you have to leave behind the vocabulary that holds you back. Every time you speak an excuse, you build a boundary around your potential. And every time you silence an excuse, you push that boundary outward and expand into who you are capable of becoming. Excuses keep you rooted in the familiar. They protect your ego, yes, but they also protect your limitations. They keep you emotionally safe, but they keep you stagnant. They give you a reason to stay exactly where you are, even when you say you want more. That's the paradox. Excuses feel like self-preservation, but they are self-sabotage in disguise. Growth, on the other hand, doesn't care about how much sense your excuse makes. It demands action. It demands that you face your fears, admit your flaws, and challenge the habits that keep you small. Growth thrives in responsibility, in the willingness to say, "It's not easy, but it's on me." It thrives when you're willing to feel awkward, to fail publicly, to be misunderstood, to keep going without applause. That's the territory where growth happens, and there's no space for excuses there. People who grow are not people who had it easy. They are people who stopped speaking in the language of limitation. Instead of "I can't," they ask a "how can I?" Instead of "it's too hard," they whisper a "let's try again." They don't run from pressure. They step into it because they know that diamonds are not formed in comfort. Excuses keep you locked in who you've always been, but growth invites you into who you're meant to become. And to accept that invitation, you must be willing to abandon the phrases and thoughts that once made you feel safe, but now keep you stuck, because growth doesn't live in comfort. It lives just beyond it. It lives in discipline. It lives in struggle, it lives in effort. But most importantly, it lives in the silence that follows when excuses are finally shut. Every time you make an excuse, you're not just avoiding a task. You're postponing your progress. You're pushing your breakthrough one more day into the future. One more opportunity slips away. One more chance at growth is missed. And the most painful part, most people don't even realize they're doing it. They believe they're buying time, when in reality they're selling their potential. Breakthroughs don't happen in perfect conditions. They come in moments of resistance, moments when everything in you wants to quit, delay, or justify giving up. And it's in those exact moments when your next level is just around the corner. But every time you give an excuse, "I'm too tired, I'll do it tomorrow," it's not the right moment. You take a step backward and that door of breakthrough closes a little more. Excuses are subtle thieves. They don't steal your dreams all at once. They chip away slowly, gently, logically. They make you feel okay about missing one more opportunity, about skipping one more habit, about staying in your comfort zone for just one more season. But while you're making peace with your delay, life keeps moving. Time doesn't stop. Neither does competition. Neither does the world, and before long that window of breakthrough becomes a mirror reflecting what could have been. Winners understand this truth. That's why they treat every excuse like a red flag. Not because they never feel tired, discouraged, or afraid, but because they've learned that their breakthrough may be hidden on the other side of that feeling. They know that pain is often the prelude to progress. That exhaustion can be the signal you're close to something powerful, and that doubt can appear right before transformation kicks in. The danger of excuses is that they feel justified in the moment. They feel rational. But success doesn't respond to how valid your reasons are. It responds to your consistency, your decisions, and your discipline. Each excuse may only delay your progress by a day, but stack them up and you could be pushing your breakthrough months, even years into the distance. Breakthrough requires movement, and movement requires action, not explanation. The time you spend making an excuse could have been the exact moment your life changed. There's a dangerous myth that winners never fail, that they always make the right decisions, always stay motivated, always succeed on the first try. But that's not true. In fact, winners fail just as much, sometimes even more than those who give up. The difference? They refuse to justify their failure with excuses. They own it, learn from it, and move forward with sharper clarity and greater strength. Failure for winners is not a stopping point. It's part of the path. They don't sugarcoat their mistakes, and they don't dress up their setbacks in fancy explanations. They say, I didn't do what I should have. I made the wrong move. I lost my focus. And then they do something powerful. They adjust. Not tomorrow, not someday, right now. Because they understand that justifying failure only reinforces it, but taking responsibility rewires it. People who make excuses for failure often fall into the trap of thinking failure is final. They try to protect their pride instead of growing their resilience. They say things like, it wasn't my fault, or that wasn't the real me, or they didn't understand. But while they're focused on preserving their image, winners are focused on rebuilding their foundation. They don't care about looking flawless. They care about becoming stronger. Winners treat failure as feedback. They don't waste time defending their ego. They dissect what went wrong, study it like a blueprint, and use it as fuel for the next move. They know that the only thing worse than falling is lying to yourself about why you fell. Excuses feel good in the short term, but they cost clarity, growth, and momentum. So instead of hiding behind reasons, winners step into responsibility. And in that responsibility, they find power. Because, here's the truth, you can't rewrite your story if you're too busy rewriting the reasons why it didn't work out. Winners would rather face the brutal facts than comfort themselves with soft lies. They don't excuse their failures, they extract lessons from them. They know every failure has something to teach, but only the honest will learn. Discipline is the silent force behind every winner. It's not loud, it doesn't beg for attention, but it's there day after day, working quietly in the background, destroying excuses before they even have a chance to speak. Discipline doesn't wait for the right mood, it doesn't ask how you feel. It shows up regardless. And that's why winners rely on it. Not motivation, not inspiration, discipline. Excuses are born in hesitation. They creep in during moments of weakness, delay, or doubt. Just 5 more minutes of sleep. I'll start tomorrow. It's not urgent. These thoughts might seem small, but they carry weight. They build habits of avoidance, inconsistency, and surrender. But discipline is the antidote. It cuts off those thoughts at the root. It says, I don't need to feel ready. I just need to move. Winners don't always feel like doing what's required. They have bad days. They feel pressure. They face fear. but they've trained themselves to lean on discipline instead of emotion. They understand that feelings are temporary, but discipline builds something permanent. It builds trust in yourself. It builds a track record of action, and it creates momentum so powerful that excuses don't even have a voice anymore. The truth is, most excuses are pre-recorded. They're habits of the mind, patterns we've repeated for years, but discipline rewrites those patterns. It replaces "I'll try" with "I will." It replaces a maybe later with a right now. It becomes a shield against delay and a sword against self-sabotage. When you train yourself to act no matter what, you strip excuses of their power before they ever take form. Discipline is also what keeps winners consistent. Not just on the good days, but on the hard ones. The days when nothing goes right, when progress feels invisible, when the world feels heavy. It's in those moments that most people fall back on excuses. But winners, they fall back on routine. They rely on what they've built inside. They let discipline carry them when motivation disappears. And here's the most important part. Discipline doesn't have to be dramatic. It's not always about 5 a.m. workouts or working until midnight. Sometimes it's just about showing up again doing what you said you'd do, even when it's uncomfortable. Making the hard choice, especially when no one is watching. Saying yes to progress and no to everything that weakens your will. Excuses wait for the perfect moment. Discipline creates progress in imperfect ones. So here's the truth. You can either make excuses or you can make progress, but never both. Every excuse you silence brings you closer to the person you were meant to become. Every time you choose action over explanation, discipline over delay, growth over comfort, you're casting a vote for your future. Vote. Winners are not superhuman. They feel fear. They experience failure. They get tired. But they rise not because it's easy, but because they refuse to let excuses define them. They don't wait for the right moment. They become it. They don't chase perfection. They chase progress. They don't explain why they couldn't. They prove why they could. Because at the end of the day, life doesn't reward excuses. It rewards execution. It rewards grit. It rewards those who keep going, especially when it's hard. So if you're tired of starting over, tired of holding yourself back, tired of watching others move while you're still stuck, then now is the time to decide. No more excuses. No more delays. No more stories. Winners don't make excuses. They make it happen. And starting today, so will you.